All right. Well, thanks so much for jumping on, Stephen, today. For those of you who've never seen Stephen or seen any of his interviews, he's done amazing things. He's 22 years old, just like myself, and owns, I believe it's a 26 bedroom total hotel, right? In
22.
22 bedrooms hotel, and then also is doing management on 12 units and is refinancing that hotel on an amazing deal, which we'll talk about later, where you're going to pull out all your money plus additional equity, which is pretty amazing. But kind of, I want to take it back to the start, so kind of giving people context about you, etc. If you kind of look back at kind of school and childhood, what would you say that things are kind of like, if you look back on it now, that was something where it kind of clicks to where you are at now?
100% sport. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people, they have these traits that overlap into future life. Like sport for me was
yeah,
great because I always had that drive to be the best or try and be the best in the
yeah.
team. Whether or not I was, but I don't know. I tried as hard as I could. So, I mean, I used to play quite a lot of tennis when I was younger.
Hmm.
And fun enough, there's a few claims to fames. Emma Raducanu, I used to kind of play with her in the boys' tournaments, so she used to play in the girls.
Yeah,
A guy called Jack Draper, who's now number one
yeah. I
in
know him as well. Yeah,
yeah. So I used to play with him.
yeah,
There's a couple of guys. He entered junior Wimbledon with another guy I used to train with.
yeah,
I stopped that when I was like 11, but
yeah,
I used to play to a high level until then, and then just got sick of it. Then I picked up
yeah.
hockey. Started hockey at 11. Ended up playing for England at 16 or 15
Hmm.
actually for the junior side.
Yeah,
That was great. Played loads of it. Again, got a bit sick of it.
hmm.
So it's that drive to try and be the best and become the best and achieve what you wanted. And I knew I wanted to wear an England shirt and
Yeah,
I ended up wearing it. And I was kind of like, yeah, I've ticked that off the box and what's next? And I guess that lines up to now in business where there's not necessarily the goal of I want to hit 10K a month or whatever, because
yeah.
you hit that, but there's so much more to go for. So
Hmm.
it's not like you hit that and you're like, okay, what else can I do? Something different, or potentially start a new
Yeah.
business and hit 10K again.
No.
But yeah, definitely sport based.
And for your sport, what was it that eventually, because I was a big rugby player when I was younger. So what was it in the sport that you would say kind of you stopped that? Because I think everyone, you either go on to become a really high level athlete or the people who are really into it kind of stop at a certain age. What was the factor for you that made you switch? And then what was your next focus after that? You kind of put all that obsessive energy into.
So yeah, I think I was just initially completely obsessed with it, and I
Yeah.
guess the reason why I stopped was just because I didn't enjoy it. And I think
Yeah.
now how that transfers in today's age in terms of property and business is that I actually
Mm.
really enjoy it. Like there's
Yeah.
no part of this. I mean, there's tiny parts where you
It's
get
tough. Yeah.
a terrible phone call and something bad happens. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's the fact that business is so enjoyable for me. Like it's
Mm.
an endless goal. You're not chasing something that's a few yards ahead. You're
Yeah.
chasing something that's over the horizon. Like you
Yeah.
should ideally have horizons one, two, and three. Horizon one is that like, want to hit 10K a month.
Yeah.
Horizon two might be I want 100 units under management. And
Yeah.
horizon three is in 5 years' time, I want X scale of business, X
Mm.
scale of this, that, and the other. Um, but I think that's probably the most transferable thing. That's probably why I didn't, ended up hating the sport because, you felt like you achieved what you've achieved and there's no further steps to go up. But now with business, it's just endless.
Yeah. And I think one thing with sports people, which is different to entrepreneurs, and maybe you have this, is that sports people you aren't actually your own boss. As much as you're fighting for yourself, you're in a team and you're also have someone above you, whether it's a coach or a manager, who's kind of telling you everything to do. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't like having that person necessarily. They don't like having the person that they have to um, answer to essentially. And do you think you relate to that at all?
Yeah, I think that's definitely relatable. In a sense of when you're playing sports, you always need a coach because you need to
Yeah.
know what skill to develop next, what to do next, what
Yeah.
shot to play, what tackle to make, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
In business, you can basically opt to have that or not.
Yeah.
A lot of people opt to not have that and
Yeah.
not have mentors and not have people in their circle who are doing better than them. For example, staying in your own circle that you grew up with when you're younger. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that those aren't the people you should be hanging out with, but it's
Mhm.
it's maybe time to reassess and think, are these people actually benefiting me and my future? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
today is great, but in 5 years' time, can I see myself hanging out with these people with their goals and their ambitions?
Yeah.
Or do I need to find people with similar ambitions to me to drive me? And also it comes down to like mentorship. Like your friends and colleagues will be the people to essentially mentor you, and you've got to reach out to people who are ahead of you in order to get that learning and speed up your success, your growth, and what you want.
So yeah, I think one of the big things between kind of sport and stuff like that is when you've got a coach or a manager, at the end of the day, they're the decision maker. And when you've got a mentor in business, although they may hold you accountable and want you to do certain things, you're the final decision maker. And that's such a kind of key factor and thing that I think most entrepreneurs really want. So going back a little bit, talking about your sport and your stuff like that, what was your kind of school experience like?
I enjoyed school. I thought it was pretty good.
Mm.
Book smart, I wasn't. I was kind of middle of everything.
Yeah,
GCSEs, I think I got like one A star, three A's, four B's, and a C. So I'm kind of
yeah,
middle-ish. I'm
middle
not
of, yeah.
super clever in every
Mm,
realm. Fun enough, I'm quite dyslexic, and I was only allowed
mm.
to take one of the English exams. There's English language and literature, and I think
Yeah.
literature is more advanced. I wasn't allowed to take that basically because the school was saying that I'd lower the grade averages too low, so they just put
Right.
me forward for the English language. So I guess in terms of speaking, I'm probably not the most, you know, the best with words. But yeah, school was pretty decent. Helped me out with
Yeah.
sport a lot. A levels, I did A levels, maths, physics, and PE.
Yeah.
Was pretty educated with that, I guess. Ended up with three A's. So uh, at that
Yeah.
point, I think I was like, geez, I probably need to put my head down because I want to get to the next stage, which was uni.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, my grades I need to get are three A's.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus, how do I hit this? And then obviously hard work, learning, and you hit that goal.
I think that's a very similar story to myself. So I wasn't very good at university, not at university, at school, middle of the road, very similar to you. And I think what you found very much like me is when you can actually knuckle down on three subjects in A levels that you enjoy, it's that kind of thing that really allows you to put that focus and that obsessive energy into it, which probably makes the massive difference. When you were kind of in school or going through that traditional process and then you went to the next level of university, were there any kind of like scratches in your mind or anything where you started wanting to push against the conventional ideas of that?
Do you know what? Funny enough, not really.
Okay,
Looking back,
interesting.
I was just like happy to do what I was doing, enjoying it as I was. And I think the reason for that was again sport. I was allowed to play sport. It wasn't like if I was just if I wasn't playing sport and I was just sort of academic,
Yeah.
I'd probably think, okay, what's next? Like,
Mm,
is there a better way to learn? And because I guess school is setting you up for life,
yeah.
in school's way of doing it, which is a kind of a regime where you're 9 to 5 and you work till you're, I think retirement age now is 67. It will probably be
Mm,
going up to 70 plus by the time that we're there.
yeah.
So, that's not the ideal lifestyle in my opinion.
Mm,
So I didn't really look for another way of going about things until I got to uni, until after first year, actually, second year of
yeah.
uni.
So what was it that made you have that mindset shift? Because for those who don't know, ended up dropping out of university. So what was it that made you have that mindset shift to go from doing the standard procedure, you went to the University of Birmingham, so a very kind of Russell Group prestigious university. What gave you that mindset shift to be like, right, I'm dropping out or I'm going to go ahead and do this?
Do you know what? I think it started just before uni. I left school and I did a gap year.
Hmm.
And that was COVID. So you can't really travel. You can't really do the things that you'd want to do on a gap year. So I just worked. Like I was a bartender, and I actually got a furlough from that, which was decent. A bartender, did a robotics internship, worked in recruitment, and worked as a tennis coach as well. So I basically worked four jobs on and off throughout the year. That put a bit of perspective in my mind of, okay, I can earn money. I can earn sales on like 3 grand a month at that point of like the mix of things.
Yeah.
I can earn okay money. That was probably okay money at that point. But then what do I do with that money? And I was like, oh shit, how do I like invest this? Because when it sits there, you're either going to spend it and never see the money again on designer clothes, which I know a lot of people that have done that coming out
Yeah.
of uni, coming out of school, and they just don't know where to put their money. So I thought, how do I make sure I don't just lose this by next month? So I knew a fair bit about classic cars and I bought a classic car. I've actually sold that now to put the money into property and I made a few grand on it. So I made a decent return over
Mm,
the time that I owned the car. So I was like, okay, that's a good investment. And then coming into uni, I think it was after the first year where first year I just went crazy. I was like, yeah, I'll do the normal uni experience, drink, go out all the time, play sport again, go to do my exams, pass them, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I think after that, it was like summer where I started reading self-development books. I actually started reading these books in the year out. And then it kickstarted where I went to this, I was probably scrolling on YouTube or something, and this guy comes up and he's like, "If you come to my £1 course, you can make loads of money in property." And I was like, Jesus, this guy sounds like a bit of a weirdo. Long
Right.
story short, he's a great guy, and I've done his education. You've done his education as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Samuel Leeds. So I went to one of his crash courses for £1, and you can't really say no to a £1 course. Went
Hmm.
there for a day, and that's obviously the top of his lead funnel. But he was giving great, great value, and I thought, if I'm paying £1 for this value, if I spend a bit more, I'll get even better value. And I did that, and we purchased his mentoring, his training. And I think that really kickstarted it, thinking that I can actually make money outside of property. And the biggest kick of that was when we went to the course, there was a guy there called Adam Hindley, who
Yeah.
we both know pretty well now. And I think Samuel brought him on stage and he was like, "This guy's making 25 grand a month." And I was thinking, what? That doesn't make
How's he
sense.
done
People
that?
can't make 25
Yeah.
grand a month. Obviously they can. And I've met him now and I can see, he makes good money with his businesses. So I was like, if that's possible, doing what his training was, it's got to be possible for me. If I work just as hard as him, I'm going to achieve this, or even harder than him, I'm going to achieve great results. So yeah, that kick-started and that was like, Jesus, I need to get onto this ASAP. And then, did a gap year. No, so not a gap year. I dropped out. I deferred a year of uni because I was
Yeah.
meant to do an internship at Reading, at Porsche at Reading. So I was meant to be good, think of getting a job at Porsche. Most people think that's a really, really good thing. I ended up getting turned away because I was quote unquote too entrepreneurial in my interview, basically
Right.
saying that I'm going to start my own business.
Yeah.
So didn't get that, and that really made me go for it. And then just went tunnel vision for property and real estate and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So how did, because I've got a similar story with the fact I had a degree apprenticeship, and I've dropped out of uni twice now. So not even once, but twice.
Nice.
Because I went, University of Nottingham, did a year there, dropped out because I got a degree apprenticeship at Amazon, then did a year there, dropped out because I, was just doing well in the property business. So how did your parents react to that? Because at the time, similar to me, you were probably what, 20, 21 years old, and you're saying, "Oh, I think I'm going to defer a year to invest money in this property course," and go, like, how did they react? Because it's not an easy conversation to have.
Yeah. I mean, I hid it quite well. So
Okay.
I didn't tell them about the course. I've still not told them to date how much I've spent on education. It's about 15 grand. It's quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that education is just kickstarting you to become better and better. It's like a year or a year and a half of university.
Yeah.
So I didn't tell them, but they knew about the interview at Porsche. They knew I did get it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take a year off from work for this time. Obviously, the work was my own business, starting up and
Yeah.
building that to, I guess, where it is today. So, yeah, parents were somewhat supportive. When they found out that the property business is going pretty well, they were more and more supportive. Because, like, even probably took less than 12 months to be earning more than a grad salary straight
Yeah.
away. And I'm almost 2 years in and it's pretty much doubled from there. So it's, yeah, going really well, to be fair.
So you took more so of the approach of like, I'm not going to tell anyone, I'm just going to show them. And once you'd reached a
Yeah.
level of which like you could kind of say, here's my work, this is what I've done, then at that point, they have no choice to be supportive. But it's those initial periods and months that people really struggle with, whether it's friends or family.
Yeah, I think showing, not saying is a massive part of what I've tried to stick by.
Yes.
I mean, I was at the pub last night. We did a pub quiz, funnily enough. I was at the
Yeah.
pub last night chatting to someone, and they were talking about losing weight, and they were like, "Oh, I really, I want to lose weight. I think I'm going to try and do it." And I was like, "Are you going to try or are you going to do it?" And he was like, and he just couldn't answer it because that is the distinguishing factor of I'm going to try and do it and put loads of effort and stuff into it, or I'm going to do it and nothing's going to stop me.
Yeah.
Losing weight, I'm just going to move more and I'm going to eat less. That's it.
Yeah.
Or trying to lose weight is, oh, I might have that ice cream, or I might not go for a run today, or I might not exercise. But you're not going to
Yeah.
get the results then, are you?
Yeah.
Simple
And
as that.
how important would you say that self-awareness and self-discipline is as an entrepreneur? Because that there is a great example of so many people even spend like you 15K, thousands of pounds on mentorship and don't get to the level they want to be. Like how important is that self-awareness to be like, right, like you said earlier, I'm just not going to let it fail. It's not an option anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, £15,000 is a lot of money to spend on education, but then
Yeah.
you've got to think about your return on that. Like my return's been great. I'm very happy with what I spent. I would spend more if I get the same return.
Right.
But I think a lot of people struggle to take that first step because they think it's a scam. Sounds like a scam. Spend X amount of thousands of pounds on this education and you'll learn to make that every single month for the rest of your life. But people don't realize it's just the truth. Like,
Mhm.
the only thing that's going to last forever is your mind,
Yeah.
if that is possible, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're training yourself to become sharper and become better and more knowledgeable. So that's where you've got to spend your time learning and understanding. And a lot of people don't have the self-awareness to think, okay, what is better than what I have today? How do I achieve that? What steps do I actually have to take? A lot of people might get to the point of, okay, step one is get around people who are in the position I want to be in or doing the things I want to do. Step two is then ask one of them to help me out. They might just think that and think, I just can't really be bothered. What I'm doing now is comfortable, and comfortable is kind of the enemy of progress.
So for when you were dropping out of uni, what would you advise someone who is, let's say 2 years behind you and they're thinking about dropping out of university or they're thinking about going to university and they don't necessarily know what they're going to do? Um, what would you advise them on, okay, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to take those steps. What would you say? Like, make sure you do these points to almost cover your back when it comes to friends, family, that kind of stuff as well.
I think if people want you to go to uni and you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start your own business, don't fulfill other people's dreams. Don't go to uni for the sake of they want me to do it, it'll make them happy. And in 3 years' time, maybe I'll be able to work for myself, be able to start my own company or whatever. You kind of think of it as the reverse. Like while you would be at university, you can spend the whole 3 years on building your business. I can almost guarantee if you're doing the right things in 3 years' time, the people who are graduating uni will be your staff. They'll be working for you. They'll be helping you grow your business, but you
Yeah.
will have all the control and all the understanding of growing it to scale. And you're not limited by working hours, salary, location, because you built that business to be sustainable and have members of staff that help you essentially grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily take other people's dreams and try and fulfill them.
Yeah.
Maybe even take 1 year out. Take 1 year out to give things a go. And that's what I did when I dropped out of uni. I deferred it a year. I was like, okay, let's do this 1 year and I'll see what happens in 12 months' time. Because worst case, I can just go back to uni. It's not that big of a deal. Taking a year out and I'm back to finish the course. And then after another year, I'm graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, which is
Mhm.
highly regarded in any
Yeah.
any space of work. I could go into investment banking, I could go into engineering, I could go into accountancy. There's loads of different ways you can go about that. But I think just chase your dream, find the people who are doing what you want to do, and just message them on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I've had dozens and dozens of DMs saying that they've
Mhm.
seen videos on YouTube, me on stage at events, or just talking to me, and they've taken a few weeks, reached back out and said, "What do I do?" And I'm like, just chase the goals, find the
Yeah.
people who are ahead of you, and do what they say.
Absolutely. Um, and was there ever a day you doubted that decision, either dropping out of uni or starting that business?
No, this is one thing, quite an entrepreneurial trait, is relentless optimism.
Yeah.
I just knew it was going to work. I knew I was going to make it work. I haven't tried to do something and it not worked out when I've kept trying my best and actually done the steps. There's a lot of people who, like I said, try and lose weight, but they don't do the inputs. They don't eat less, which is one of the inputs that they do, and they don't move more, which is another input that they do. They just hope that they'll lose weight over time, which obviously, you can't wish for that to happen. You have to have to actually make movements and take action to make that happen. So I didn't. Been no point where I've regretted it. I've just thought, knuckle down and start working, start doing what I want to do.
Yeah. And then you've taken, I assume, those tough days that you have had, and but maybe even a day where you thought you were close to it, and you've got to find the solution to that problem and just keep going, I think.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
and then going on from that, if we start to delve into a bit more of your kind of entrepreneurial journey and where you started. So you went on, you've been through the whole Samuel Leeds process. What was it kind of first thing that got you into property and you kind of got started in property that led you onto the journey where you are now today?
So I think the first thing was when I took the year out, the start of it, I said to my family I wanted to get into property. So what I did was basically tell my family I want to get into property. Do you know anyone who's in the position where I want to be, essentially? Do you know anyone who's in property, who's done this before, that I can just have a chat with, have a coffee, understand how they've done what they've done, to essentially, like I've said, follow the footsteps of them. Because if they've done it, I'm sure, it's not magic and it must work. So there's a few people that I met, a few friends of my dad who got into property years and years ago. And there was
Hmm.
this one guy. I mean, there were a few people. One of them had a few houses. Kind of, he still did a bit of like consulting work on the side, extra money on the income. But he had great net worth tied up in a few houses nearby in the south of England. So they're all worth £500,000. He's got five houses. Say he's worth £2 million or something like that. There was this one guy who did property development and investment to like a serial way, where he was constantly doing developments. He was doing refurbs, flips, kept properties, commercial, residential. And went for a coffee with him, told him about my plan. Um, Actually had another coffee with him a few months later and proposed, the idea of him helping me pitch to an investor. So I was asking him how to pitch an investor. Like, if you were an investor, would this deal pack be appealing for you if you were loaning finance? And he kind of stopped me halfway through it and said, why don't I just give you the money?
Yeah.
And now he's an investor of mine. So yeah, funny enough, just having that coffee led me to someone who's going to put, or who has put, a lot of money into my property deals, which is amazing. I mean, win-win. I get the finance that would otherwise take 5 to 10 years to build up, and he gets more than a full-time salary from it on interest. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things that is such an important lesson is that when you start in any business journey, the first people you should be reaching out to are the people who actually are within some sort of network you have, whether it's a friend of a friend, a dad's friend's uncle, like whatever it is, because that can be so powerful. And if you just manage to sell to even that network of people, you already have such a big customer base. And I think that's the one thing that people are scared to do because um, they're just scared to ask people that might know them or might think a certain way about them when they ask those things. How did you kind of get over that? And what you did is very smart in terms of pitching in a way that you weren't actually trying to pitch in. But how did you get over that to be like, Dad, please help me with anything you can?
I think that was just a very simple conversation. I told my parents, I told just anyone who I'd get in touch with and see, like, I'm not going to uni next year. I'm just going to learn about property investment, property development, and just want to learn about it. And people they were quite volunteering of, oh, I know a friend who does this, have a chat with them. And I had a
Yeah,
few phone calls, and I mean, there's people now who I went to uni with actually messaging me asking for phone calls of how to do what I'm doing now, which is a great kind of turnaround to think,
yeah,
geez, I'm actually in the position that people would want to be in.
yeah,
It's so strange. 2 years ago, I was looking through the other end of the lens, looking at the person in the future who's making X amount a month, doing the projects, doing the developments, owning the businesses.
yeah,
And I'm on the other side of that. It's quite funny to look back and see that.
yeah. So your first sort of big project and deal that you took and raised finance for was this 22-bed hotel. How did you go about finding that in the first place? And then obviously we've touched on the investor. And then I think it'd be great to talk about how you structured that deal.
Yeah. Do you know what? In terms of finding deals, a lot of people are very obsessed with off market, and they need to speak to estate agents. They need to slip them a brown paper bag with a grand in there and make sure that they get the best deals and whatever. But mine was on Rightmove, and mine
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily this off-market deal that's secret. No one had ever seen before. It'd been on the market for months, probably 6 months plus. But it was more. I mean, at that point, I literally went on Rightmove, sorted by price low to high, and a minimum of 10 bedrooms. So I was thinking, with a lot of bedrooms in the property market, it's going to be a big property because you can't necessarily sort by internal square feet unless it's on a commercial search. So residential, minimum 10 bedrooms. If I had to reconfigure that to flats, it's possible. So viewed loads of properties, probably like a dozen properties, but none of them fit my criteria. I mean, in terms of the ROI, they just weren't there. It was too much capital down. It wouldn't make enough margin for me to pay the investor his interest every month and then also make money on the side, which is very, very important because otherwise, if you're only able to pay the investor interest, there's no point in doing it anyway because you're not making any money. So yeah, this one deal came across the table. I viewed it and walked away. Just wasn't right for me at the time. The price was too high. But then situations changed, and the seller was motivated to sell, reduced the price of it, and then I gave him a cash offer, and he accepted.
Yeah, I think the power of no is so important, to just sit back and say like, this is my worth or this is my offer. And then those best deals, I think for me as well, and for most people, it's actually the deals that come around the second or third time on the offer are the ones you end up doing. It's never the ones that you get first hand, first away, you put in the offer straight away, because it's just generally the numbers are never going to be there at the point that you want them to be for a property investor. So you secured this house, and tell a little bit about the buying process, because I know you went through, was it post auction that you bought the property?
Yeah, so it was. I don't know whether you'd call it pre, post, or mid auction because it was
Right.
quite weird. So it had been through one auction. I think it was like a week long on I Am Sold, and I Am Sold is modern method of auction where you basically bid up against each other. I can't remember the exact process, but it's not like a traditional hammer down auction. It's slightly different. So yeah, it went through that, and I didn't buy it the first time around because the price was too high and it just didn't suit. I couldn't get a valuer around there to check the valuation because as a first property, you can only do so much research without having real world applicable knowledge. I didn't have time to get a valuer out, so I just said no, let it pass by again. And then it didn't sell and went to another week long auction after that at a reduced price. Halfway through that week long auction, I put a cash offer in and he accepted, and then it was taken off of the auction. And then I also negotiated a 90-day completion rather than a 56-day, which it usually is. And yeah, we completed 90 days after that, and the keys were mine. But the buying process was fairly simple, actually. Because it's auction, they are very, very strict on let's start the process right now, rather than I'll enact my solicitor next week. Like I had to get the solicitor on the phone on the day. I had to pay the fee on. I had to pay it on the day and the day after. Um, Luckily, I'd pitched my investor before that, just on this type of deal, and he's like, "Yeah, if it works, I'll give you the finance." So, had the finance already, and yeah, just picked up the keys 3 months. Well, yeah, 90 days later.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. And what was that kind of experience like of having to go through? Had you raised the capital before you'd purchase the property, or did you have any initial agreement in place?
So it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Like you can always have a deal, but the numbers will change. And I had that deal, and the numbers changed. The numbers went lower, and he provisionally was able to loan. We were going to do it with bridging. He was going to loan the finance, and I was going to use the bridging interest from a bridging company. And I had that kind of provisionally agreed. But after all, we actually ended up buying it cash because the price had come down a fair amount. So we had the verbal agreement before, and then we had a written agreement after that. So
Okay.
yeah, he managed to send me the finance. I paid the auction fee. I think it was like 4.2%. Can't remember exactly. I think that's what it was. I think it's gone up to 4.5 or 4.6 now. Yeah, that was paid on the day. And then straight away we got the value around because I needed, as a mental sanity check, I needed to get a
Yeah.
value around to check the value of the
No.
property. But I hadn't lost loads of money, and I was like, oh God. But yeah, luckily it was valued higher than when I purchased it for, so that was all good.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was pretty simple after that. We used a solicitor. The solicitor was pretty decent. They were pretty on it. I probably wouldn't use them again though. And the reason being that on the day of completion, the solicitor called me up, and the day before I called them, I said, "Are we on track to complete tomorrow?" Because I think we were exchanging and completing on the same day.
Yeah.
And then the morning of completion, I was sat with the seller and we were just handing over keys, talking about the property. Is there anything that I need to know, essentially? I got a call from the solicitor saying, we're not able to complete today. And then obviously me and the seller were like, what? You know, if we don't complete today, we breach the terms of the auction and
Yeah.
I have some large fee to pay. And obviously the seller had told everyone, told his customers that he's selling it, told his staff that he's selling it. It puts us both in a very awkward position.
Yeah, of course.
Long story short, we managed to complete on the day, luckily. But yeah, I'll probably be using the recommended solicitor of my investor because he's used them for 100 property purchases and they've been
Yeah.
brilliant. So I think
Yeah, of
I'll
course.
I'll stick with recommendations for the future.
Of course, that makes sense. So run us through quickly just the numbers on that when you purchased it and what the valuation came in at.
Yeah, so purchased it for 320,000 for both properties. So it's technically one large detached house and then two that are end terrace and mid terrace but connected.
Yeah.
Um, all in with fees came to about 355 because auction, solicitor, stamp duty, there's a few other fees that are in there as well.
Mm.
So 355 in, and the valuation or valuation fees as well. And the valuation came back. We had it a week later at 510. So immediately there's that jump in equity. Now I'm coming to refinance. It's only a year since I purchased it, but we're putting forward valuations of 600, and the uh, mortgage companies, the lenders, are happy with that. They've called up values in the area, and they're like, "Yeah, that seems reasonable." Obviously,
Mm.
in a year's time, after 2 years of commercial books, we'll be at a point where we can go to other lenders and we can have our pick of the bunch in terms of the likelihood of lending we'll get is maybe say it's 600,000 after a value has been out, and loan to value about 65%, because it's commercial. It's not going to be 75%. We'll stick at 65 and we'll just pull out that equity, and that'll be the funding for the next project.
Yeah.
And essentially all the money left in the deal will be new equity created that's my quote unquote net worth, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And how did you go about the process then? You've bought this hotel, you've done an amazing deal, you're going to get all the equity out plus money. The process of then being actually taking over the managing and running of a hotel, and a hotel at the time that wasn't performing very well, and you come in and basically have to pick this business up. So you've purchased the actual business and the property, you've got to pick this business up and turn it around. How did you do that in the space of like 2-3 months?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. It was fortunately the processes and systems were already there, and we had staff on site. Unfortunately, a couple of them said that they would continue like 2 days before the completion. That was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But there was another member of cleaning staff there who she was amazing, and she's now my full-time manager there. She is absolutely brilliant. Where she kind of saw the situation that I would be in, and kind of she leapt at the moment because she wanted to be a manager. She wanted to do that role, but she never got given the opportunity before.
Yeah.
So now she is the full-time manager there. She helped me with the running of it, the operations, ordering stock, things like that, just within a few days of completing. But
Okay.
fortunately, I had other experience. So we've actually got an apart hotel in Liverpool called the Seven
Yeah.
Suites, 7 flats, central Liverpool. We operate that as a hotel. So a lot of my knowledge came from there in terms of how to manage multiple units in one block or one area.
Mhm.
The systems that we have, the cleaner systems, the channel manager, and anything else about helping the guests get in, which I've actually changed systems since then, and it's even more efficient now.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of back end systems. There wasn't too much of on the ground work. Like it didn't need a refurb, fortunately.
Yeah.
I probably spent a few £1,000s on things like new door handles, because when you look at a door, the thing that will make you think that that's old and run down is most of the door handle. So if it's got a nice new door handle, it looks like it's new. So yeah, I mean, just a few £1,000 and a lot of systems on the back end. And because it was an established business, people knew that that sort of accommodation was there.
Yeah.
So we just took over the assumption of this is the same business. People
Yeah.
assume it's the same business, which is great because then previous customers won't assume that the standards of cleaning have changed. They'll still think the standards of cleaning are great, the standards of everything in the hotel is good. So yeah, we just kept it up like that.
Yeah, just the same business under new ownership, and you could kind of benefit off that, which is one of the kind of the great things about property is that you bought the asset and you bought the business to go along with it, which is a massive
Yeah.
benefit for you as well.
I mean, there's a lot of podcasts nowadays where people talk about what business to start in 2025.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't say a specific business. They're like, just target like baby boomer businesses where the people have run that business for the last decade or so. They just want to retire. Like they've made their money out of it. They've put their hard work in. And now the money doesn't bother them. They don't need the money because they built it up over the last few decades. They just want to retire and, have their relaxed time in the future. And a lot of people are just looking to sell. They're not looking for loads of money for it. And acquiring those businesses and just putting new age thinking, technology, and processes in there usually turns it around to be something very profitable. And I mean, the
Yeah.
word of mouth from those old businesses are already going to be very good. You just have to make sure that you're picking something that you are confident you can upgrade, increase the revenue, and make sure that you're still providing a good service.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking the kind of old systems and the people who've, maybe for, in your example, bought a B&B because they wanted to run it and that was the kind of their dream. And you've come in, revamped the whole system and brought, as you said, new age thinking of AI, tech, systems, automation, and then you can run it into a really smooth business. So what are the kind of numbers that you're pulling in on that hotel at the moment in terms of occupancy and your figures on that on a monthly basis?
So in revenue, I can't be too public about that, but our
That's fair enough.
occupancy is anywhere from 70. It's probably average out the year of 70%
Okay,
occupancy. So
that's very
it's
good.
very strong numbers for a hotel.
Yeah.
Monday to Friday, we are almost always booked out every single room every single week. The weekends in the winter we're pretty much empty for. Not a lot of people travel away for the weekend in the winter, or
Yeah.
I mean, we're on what's called the Viking Path because it's a lovely walkway in North Lincolnshire, and a lot of people are walkers. They, start walking on Friday, stay over Friday night or Saturday night with us, and they continue the walk. So now in the summer, we're getting booked out more and more.
Yeah.
So that's in the main house, and it's like two properties, like I said. In the second house, that's one large 9 bedroom house that we just have booked out for contractors most of the
Okay.
time. So the occupancy on that one is 100%, but obviously the rate is slightly discounted because they're taking it for so long.
Because you're getting those
Um,
long-term bookings.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, in terms of revenue, we every single month since we've started operating, we've had higher revenue than the previous owner has ever
Mm.
had. We've beaten his best month ever.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is the push of I need to pay this investor interest. Like there's thousands of pounds a month that
Yeah.
needs to be paid out no matter what, whether the business is running or not. Like this guy still has to get paid for the interest of the finance. So I'm not in the position of I own it cash. My overheads are nothing if it doesn't run. Like
Yeah.
I don't own it cash, and the overheads are quite high. So
Yeah. So you've got the determination that you can't let it fail and you have to run it profitably no matter what, because at the end of the day, your business will collapse in an instant if you weren't bringing in that kind of cash flow. But I think it's a great kind of thing to have. And then within that transition, I'm sure you learned so much from it. What were the kind of key lessons that you took from one, going from being 22 years old and having to manage staff and having people working under you, which is in itself a interesting and odd scenario to be in sometimes. And then two, learning all these systems, learning the processes of managing a hotel.
I mean, yeah, the systems probably came a little bit easier
Yeah.
because in the end of the day, you're just learning off other people. If they say use this channel manager, you just plug it in and you learn how to use it, and that's kind of that. I think talking and dealing with staff members and other contractors you use, that's been a lot harder because there's no teaching or preparation of how to use that. Like in terms of technology, you've probably used coding sites at school. You've probably used Microsoft Word at school. Like you understand technology and software. But in terms of communicating with people in a win-win situation where they're working for and with you, it's new. Like it's not the same. You can't use that correlation between sport and here because sport is very direct. Like you say what you need then in the moment because it's instant. But unfortunately, a lot of people haven't had that relationship with sport and they react badly to direct feedback. So learning and understanding how to give proper feedback and proper constructive criticism is has been a massive challenge. And I'm not perfect at it at all. Like I'm getting better, and that's it. You've
Yeah.
just got to try and improve and learn upon feedback that you've had from the feedback you've given to other people. So yeah, that's definitely been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think unfortunately no one teaches you how to hire or manage staff. It's one of the most important skills you can have as a business owner, but there's no real course or any mentorship on how do you hire employees? How do you find employees? How do you, manage staff, especially if, in that situation where you're so young and everyone looks at you as a baby and you're coming in and you're telling people what to do or trying to do these deals for like hundreds of thousands of pounds or blocks of apartments. It can be a tough gig sometimes. Um, but what would you give as like your three key things that you have learned on bringing new staff members on?
100%. So biggest thing is don't compromise price for quality. So if you're hiring at £30,000 a year, that's your budget, and someone who's really, really good says they want 35 or they're not going to come on board. And you're like, oh, I don't know. I can get this guy who's good for 30 grand, or I can get someone who's very good for 35. Just pay more. Just go for the person who's more talented. You
Yeah.
can never compromise talent because it will affect you very badly in the future in terms of how they help grow the business. Because in the end of the day, the thing that pays the staff wages is the business.
Yeah.
And if the staff member doesn't help the business grow and create more stable income, they're actually compromising their own job as well as your whole business. So you need to hire smart in terms of aim for very high quality and very high talent because it will just come back to bite you badly. Like fortunately, I've not. I mean, I've had a couple of hires that weren't weren't as high talent and quality as I'd expected, and they no longer work with us. But the ones that have been potentially more expensive and very committed, they have been great hires because they've kept up the quality of their work, they've kept up the quality of the business name, um, and they're great. And I'd try and never let them go.
Yeah.
In
It's the
terms
saying.
of,
Sorry, go for it.
I mean, in terms of two other tips, I don't know if I have two other tips to give really. I think that's just such a big point of people miss out on that. People don't understand compromising on price because everyone's looking for a bargain. They always want a deal. Like on software, you can negotiate it because the software is the function, the price is completely movable. But
Yeah.
when you target that with people, people will move to the quality of what they want to do. And if they think they're getting a great pay for what they're doing, they'll work even harder. But if not, it will work the opposite way.
Yeah. I think there's two things that I would add on to that is like the saying of hire fast, fire even faster. So it's like if someone's not operating at the level you need them to, you have to get them out of your business quickly. And then the second one is that, like you said, the price function is so important because if you bring in a high quality 18 player and you're paying them a lot, they're going to drive that value 10 times more than if you ever got the, mid person player who came in and you were paying them 5 grand less. So actually paying someone more can 2, 3x the kind of output that you get from a person. And that's super, super valuable. Um, and then when you kind of moved on into your property journey, so you then had this big deal, you'd learn how to manage, systemize, set up a hotel and everything, but you were in the position, as you talked about, you kind of did get stuck, but you couldn't release the equity yet because of mortgage, finance, and you couldn't get the commercial valuation yet. So where did you go in your next kind of journey and play to make sure that you could still grow as a person and grow your property business?
So the next step I wanted to take was, like you said, release equity, and my next project was going to be a flip. I was going to buy a house, do it up, sell it on, learn the mistakes. I don't have to make loads of money in that. I could even net even, but the mistakes I'd make and the lessons I'd learn in that would be crucial for future developments. So obviously, unfortunately, that didn't happen. There is more equity to be loaned, like from the investor. He's got multiple six figures. He's got seven figures that he wants to loan out. However, I'm not confident enough that the next project will be super. I'll make loads of money and I'll pay it back. And I also just want to prove it to myself that mortgages are a real thing. Like you can go from private finance to this is now a mortgage. It's, say anywhere because it's commercial rates, it'll be about 8% interest for a 5 year period. And it's locked in 5 years. I've got that finance. No one's potentially going to say I need the money back. Like it's more stable. So that didn't happen. And I didn't want to loan any more finance at the high rate of interest that I'm paying. So I thought, I mean, I'm managing the 7 suites in Liverpool with my other business partners, myself, and I'm managing the hotel operations from my computer. And the people who are on ground are cleaners and maintenance staff. So my role is almost redundant. Like I've set the systems up, set the processes up, set the automations up, and now my role is more passive. Yes, I still get phone calls in the evenings, but I couldn't hire into that position of taking the phone calls because the cash flow wasn't high enough. So I thought, right, okay, what's the next step? And I knew that people do very well out of letting agencies. So I thought, why don't I start managing other people's Airbnbs? Because I do that at the moment. I manage effectively seven single units and 22 rooms. So call it like 33 rooms. I manage 33 rooms from my laptop and I can still take calls. I know the processes. I basically have a plug and play system where it will be profitable as soon as I plug a new property in. So I just announced on social media I'm doing management and we had units come on board. And the first unit was quite tough because I didn't have the systems of managing for other people yet. But that transfer from managing for myself to other people was very, very simple and very, very quick. So yeah, set that up. in the first few months, I think I took on like 6 or 7 units and within a couple of months. Now I'm managing 12 and I'm on month, well, I started in December. So 4.5 months, 5 months in. Yeah, it's becoming reasonably profitable. We've got a full-time VA on board. They work UK mornings, and my hire. I'm currently with a recruitment company trying to hire for an operations manager who'll be a full-time member of staff working UK evenings, and that's where it comes into taking the phone calls away from me because I'm still getting phone calls in the evenings. So now I've finally got the cash flow to pay for that member of staff who will be able to help build the business and help us grow, and
Yeah.
also take away some of the reactive elements of people are calling you when you're about to eat dinner or
Yeah.
you're with the family or you're on
Yeah.
your one day off and then you've got to take
Yeah.
a phone call for an hour and a half because a guest doesn't know how to check in or something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think
it's
one of
it's
the
a lot
best things
of hard
that,
work, a lot of hard work to build up to that hire. So
yeah, one of the best things that we've ever done was hire a guest communications manager or operations manager, whatever title you want to give them, was the fact that didn't get scared anymore when my phone was about to ring. And it was just like, I knew it was not going to be a guest or anything like that, was one of the best hires that we've ever done. And they have taken so much kind of like stress and leeway off that. And so to grow your management business that quickly, especially in the first month to now 4 or 5 months, well, I can't remember exactly what you said, to do that is very impressive. How do you do that and generate those leads? Because most people would essentially sit there and go, well, I want to start a management business. Obviously, they may not have the social proof and the backing of everything that you've done prior, but you've grown it rapidly. Even if they could get 3, 4 units, they could be in a position where they leave their job. So how did you generate the lead so quickly and grow so fast?
I think all of my customers have, all of my clients, maybe bar one or two, have come through social media directly. And I didn't start saying I was doing management for other people until I had 5,500 followers. And those 5,500 was grown from a brand new account. It wasn't one I had previously. I started up less than 2 years ago when I started getting into property. And I just started posting about what I was doing, literally what I was doing day to day, property, viewings, systems, bookings, things like that. Nothing special, nothing necessarily, you know, comment this. And I'm not trying to boost the algorithm. I'm just posting very organic content, and people started organically coming and viewing my profile. And then once I said about management, obviously these people have seen me getting great bookings in the properties that I manage. Suddenly they're like, oh my God, I need to get some of this. He needs to come on board and manage my property. So it was a very quick process of me saying it to people saying, how do I, how do you manage my property? What's the next steps? So very inbound. I've done no outbound reaching out for management properties. And I think there were 2 or 3 others that had just come through word of mouth. So I'm doing very well for one landlord, and they just recommend me to another person. So yeah, very organic. And it was just through social media and word of mouth. Because in the end of the day, your reputation is the one thing that follows you everywhere. You can't get rid of a reputation. It's going to be there forever. So you might as well make it a good one.
No, I mean, that's a very impressive conversion to do 12 units in 4 or 5 months through purely social media. And I think that's one of the things that people, like you said, documenting your story, people don't realize that it's not actually necessarily when you've got nothing. Even if you just document it, people will buy into you and buy into your process. And that's when you can actually leverage it to have customers later down the line. Because, just because you have nothing, it doesn't mean that no one's interested. And how did a lot of people are scared and they don't want to post on social media, and you just went for it. What was it in you that just like, you're like, that's it, I'm doing it?
Do you know what? I think it was the fact of like all or nothing. So do I want to try and have a property business, or do I want to build a property business? No, I wanted to build one. I wanted to actually do it. So the steps of in this new day and age, I mean, there was like the industrial revolution, and then there's like the technological revolution, but now it's all, everything is based around personal branding. So instead of companies, like if you look on Instagram or whatever social media you want to use for your business, LinkedIn maybe, the people with the most following and the most traffic aren't Microsoft or Apple. It's, you know um, the individuals who are running them, Bill Gates, Alex Hormozy, rather than acquisition.com, multiple big business owners, Stephen Bartlett instead of Diary of a CEO. Like, Stephen Bartlett has the traffic. So if he wanted to start a shoe brand next week, there would probably be 100,000 people who would click buy within 5 minutes of it going live
Yeah, it's
because he's
that
built that
personal
brand.
buy-in that it changes the game completely. Because anything that eventually, it's like a Midas. Anything that you then touch turns into gold instantly because you just can make money and you can just leverage that personal brand. And I mean, you clearly you've showed it there that you basically you've been posting on social media for what 2 years, year and a half, and then you've started a management company like that. You've turned it into something that will replace 95% and 99% of people's full-time salary just by posting on social media and building a business out that way. Like that's for most people should be enough of a game changer to see the benefits they can have. So you talked about hiring and that you're going to bring in an ops manager, and you're looking to scale that business. How did you, how do you manage your time and priorities to kind of realize like now is the time to hire, now is the time to scale, that kind of thing?
I think a lot of my knowledge about this sort of stuff has come from podcasts about Alex Hormozy talking about how to grow your business. And I think something that he's said very well is there'll be a point where you're making good money. I mean, there's been multiple points where you're making good money, but your next hire is going to cost you your whole income. And you're like, I can buy myself out of this, but then I've got no money. But then you never reach the next level without doing that. And he was saying, like, there'll be a point where you're making 150 grand a year. But the hire you need to make for your business is going to be an A level player at 140K salary. So, like, do you make that hire now for the fact of your income is gone? You're net zero, basically, for the wish or the hope that they will help basically double the revenue so that your margin instead of 100 grand is 200 grand or 250. So it's been more of a sacrifice. You basically need to go against your logical thinking about my goal is to make money, where you have to sacrifice some of that in order to make sure that the business grows in an organic and a healthy way. Where you hire, like we said, hire the right people. If they cost more, they cost more, but they've got to be the right hire. So I think it was the point where maybe you're making a few thousand a month and your next hire is going to be 2 grand a month. Suddenly half your income is just flick of the fingers, it's gone.
Yeah, it's all about that delayed gratification. Like that you, as the director and company CEO, everyone's like, oh, you make the money. But for the first however many years of your business, you basically have to sacrifice all of that. You have to be the one who gets paid last because your employees are always going to get paid. But if you don't have the margin or whatever at the end of your business, you can't pay yourself those dividends. You can't, do that. And that's the sacrifice. Like you have to make. Like I didn't pay myself out of our business till literally 2, 3 months ago. And I was living off kind of savings and salary I had elsewhere and that kind of stuff. And you have to make those sacrifices to really level your game up. So I think that's a great kind of advice and super important. Um, and to kind of round it off, I would love you to share some final thoughts of like, if you could go back and start it all over again, what would you say? Like, not the model, not the, you would say like, these are the steps that I would take and what I would try and do to basically do that 2 year span, but then do it in 1 year because you've done it faster. You've now got all the knowledge and learnings.
Great question. So I think if I was to go back to the start in terms of what I would do, I'd definitely say just find people doing what you want to do. Just find them social media, in person, no matter what. If you see someone at the gym who looks like they've got a t-shirt that says something about property and they run their own business, just go up and say hi, ask them what they do, ask them how they do it, see if you can sit down with them for a coffee. And I mean, I've had that multiple times where I've sat down with investors over coffees. But yeah, you need to get in front of the people who are doing what you want to do. Education is the next biggest step because that will be how you do what you want to do. You don't know what to do yet. You don't know how to run a property business until you get the understanding of this is how you set up a company, this is how you gain clients, this is how you manage bookings, this is how you manage cleaners, handymen, all this sort of stuff. So education would be top. Community or the group of people that you're around would be second because they will give you the initial motivation to be like, this is possible, to help you see people in front of you, help you gain the understanding and the mentorship. So education, community, and then just take an action. Just take relentless action. Do exactly what the people ahead of you are saying to do to grow their business. Like if someone says they got 5 properties for a management business by knocking on doors, by knocking on 500 doors, you should go and knock on 500 doors because that's proof of concept. It's a proven method that works. If someone else says they ran Google Ads and got it, verify which one is going to be the most leverageable and most productive and do that. So I think it's down to learning about how to do it and then following the steps that other people have taken. Just speed them up.
Yeah, I
More
think that's
volume.
great. I think that's a great way to do it. I think volume is one of the key things when you start is that consistency and volume just to keep pushing. If you push longer and harder than anyone else, even if you are not very good at what you do, eventually you will get very good at what you do. And that's how you can reach that next level. But yeah, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to kind of come on here, speak to people, talk that. And it's amazing what you're doing in business. So I'd say keep smashing it. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, Joost. Thanks for having me and thanks for letting me share my thoughts.